In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest trade rumors on the Chicago Blackhawks. Could an Alex Debrincat trade change the heart of Patrick Kane and maybe send him out of town as well? Plus, we have an update on the Ottawa Senators. They may be looking to trade Connor Brown. Plus, could Marc-Andre Fleury sign with Montreal as a free agent this offseason? We'll discuss all that, plus some talk from the free agent world and recapping last night's Avalanche beatdown of the Lightning. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. First up, I just want to talk about quickly the Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final last night. We saw the Avalanche absolutely dominate the Lightning with a massive 7-0 victory to take a 2-0 series lead in the, of course, in the best of 7 here. So they win both their home games to open the series. The series now shifts to Tampa for games 3 and 4 on Monday and Wednesday, respectively. Going to be very, very interesting. Even though the Avs win 7-0, I think it's fair to say that it's one of Darcy Kemper's easier games as an NHL goaltender. Didn't face a ton of shots, and when he did, they weren't really high-quality danger shots. The Avalanche completely dominated. They hemmed the Lightning in their zone several times for long stretches. It was just odd man rush after odd man rush. Tampa just could not get going, and every time you thought something good was happening, they might kind of create something, the Avalanche just shut it down. And like I said, Kemper made a few good saves when he had to, but it really wasn't worked overly hard. Even guys like Landeskog and McKinnon didn't really have a huge night offensively, and they still put up 7. They got a couple of goals later in the game from Cale Makar. Val Nichushkin had another huge game for them with a couple of goals. Josh Manson with another big one. There's just absolutely a lot of their depth was pitching in. It was just a really solid, dominating team victory. This team, the Avalanche, are nothing like I think the Lightning have faced in the last couple of years in the Stanley Cup playoffs. No disrespect to the Stars who they faced 2 years ago in the final, or the Habs last year, but this Avalanche team is just on a whole other level. I think it's fair to say it's definitely by far the toughest challenge in the 3 Stanley Cup finals that we've seen the Lightning participate in here in the past 3 seasons. Of course, Vasilevsky struggled as well, especially in that Manson goal. I thought he kind of looked like he lost his net a little bit. They continue to go after the blocker side, and as Vasilevsky seemed to struggle a bit, the team in front of him really responds negatively. I find when he doesn't play well, they really sag in front of him, and they don't play with confidence. They don't play with the pace that they normally do to kind of get themselves out of their rut. Even though the Avs are up 2-0 in the series, and it certainly looks like it's a very domination here, I would not count Tampa out here just yet. I'd never count Tampa out. Now, if Game 3 goes poorly and the Avs win, okay. I mean, the odds even now are highly against Tampa to come back in the series, especially for the Stanley Cup Final. You don't see teams down 2-0. It's rare that you see a comeback victory, but it's this Lightning team has been very resilient over the years. And if anybody could pull it off, it's them. So I'm not really ready to write them off here as of yet. But right now, the Avalanche have only lost a couple of games this entire playoffs. They had 2 series sweeps leading to the final. They just seem to be an absolute freight train that's running over teams, and the Lightning just might be their next victim. Now, speaking of the Avalanche, listening to the latest 32 Thoughts podcast that came out earlier today, Elliot Friedman made mention of Val Nichushkin, who's had a huge season for the Avs in the regular season and has been a major, big-time contributor for them here in the playoffs run. Of course, he a couple of years back was playing with the Dallas Stars, where he started his career and had a 0-goal season, so he was bought out. Dallas wanted to move on. And ultimately, Nichushkin signs in Colorado and has really found his game. And I think it's fair to say that Jared Bednar and the positions that he's put him in has helped, and the gain the coach's trust, etc. He's played a big role, so that the Avalanche have already made it known to Nichushkin and his agent that he is a very big priority to try to get re-signed this offseason, and that outside of maybe getting the Nathan MacKinnon extension completed, because that's due or eligible this offseason as well, that this contract is probably next on their list of high priorities. And I think Nichushkin, based on what Friedman was saying, is well aware that if he wants to stay in Colorado, he might have to leave a little bit of money on the table because of the tight cap situation, but he already knows what it's like to be in another situation that doesn't work out. And then it's not always, grass isn't always greener on the other side, so to speak. So wouldn't be completely shocking if he takes a little bit of a discount to stay with the Avalanche and signs a longer-term contract to be a big part of that team. He's been a dominant two-way forward. At this point, I could see him even getting into the Selke conversation as well in the next few years if he continues to keep this up. He's been an absolute force for the Avalanche. They've obviously recognized that they're more likely going to lose Nazem Kadri, who we know is also for a big payday after fairly outplaying his last contract as well, which is very much a team-friendly deal. And, between Kadri and Nichushkin, Kadri's been out here obviously for a while, and they're still winning. So it's, I guess, proven to themselves that as much as Kadri's a great player and important, they can do it without him. Nichushkin, on the other hand, has been, might have to be a higher priority for them to keep around, which is much more likely. So we'll see how this offseason goes, but Val's definitely going to get himself paid. And after a struggle to start his career, he's found his game with the Avalanche. And it probably is best for his career and good for them if he finds a way to stay and re-sign there. Now, Friedman's also mentioning about some coaching updates on his podcast, talking a bit about the Oilers. Of course, he talked about the fact Kevin Weeks had the report yesterday. He just touched on the fact that it does sound pretty likely that Jay Woodcroft is closing in on a contract with the Oilers. He said people would be really shocked if he didn't end up being the Oilers coach next year. It sounds like a 3-year deal is likely going to be in order and should be finalized and announced here in the not too distant future. Of course, talking about Barry Trotz, he is meeting with the Jets again here this coming week, and I'm not really sure when a decision is going to be made. We had other reports from, I believe it was Pierre LeBrun, saying it could be July 1st before we have a decision on Trotz, but certainly bodes well for Winnipeg. As they talked about on the podcast, a lot of other teams obviously been kind of whittling down their options. A few teams have made some hires, so those opportunities are out, and it just makes sense that Trotz is either going to end up in Winnipeg or maybe like in Nashville in management role. They kind of wonder about Detroit to an extent, but it seems a little bit less likely there too. So we'll see. The Florida situation, though, is interesting because it is rumored that Trotz is on their radar, because we did find out that Bill Zito is talking to other candidates and may not be giving interim head coach Andrew Brunette, who's a finalist for the Jack Adams Trophy, the full-time job. So we'll have to see how that goes. Obviously, Trotz and Brunette do have a previous relationship, and Friedman was saying that he very well doesn't see Trotz going to Florida because he wouldn't want to kind of take Brunette's job, so to speak. But part of the rumor that was floating around is that Florida might try to bring in a guy like Trotz or a more senior guy to work with Brunette just on a short-term basis for a year or two, and then let Brunette take over. But we'll see how things fall there. And it does sound like Boston is going to end up with probably a newer coach or fresher coach, you could say. There's less likely a chance of it being somebody who's coached in the NHL before. If they did, it wouldn't be somebody with a ton of experience. So we're looking at Jim Montgomery. Of course, did coach before, but doesn't have a lot of head coaching experience at that level. You got Nate Lehman, Jay Leach, Mark Savard, Spencer Carberry, all in the mix, and David Quinn. Of course, Quinn coached for a while at the Rangers, but again, like him and Montgomery, they technically would be recycled coaches per se, but not guys that have been around the block for an extended period of time. So we'll see where a couple of those coaching situations go here in the coming days. Shouldn't be too long before things start falling into place more across the league, now that we've had a few decisions and hires made. Friedman also talked about on Hockey Night in Canada last night, and again mentions it in the podcast that came out today, about Connor Brown and the Ottawa Senators, saying that the Sens may decide to trade Connor Brown this offseason, mainly because the rumor has it that where he's got 1 year left on his contract, he may be reluctant to sign a contract extension this offseason and may wish to pursue free agency next year. Connor Brown has 1 year left at $3.6 million. Not necessarily that he doesn't like Ottawa or anything of that nature. It's more of a case of probably seeing a lot of other similar type players that are your middle six forwards that have good speed, and obviously it can be offensive, like Brandon Hagel, obviously his buddy Nick Paul, who just went to Tampa, guys like that are getting expanded roles on cup contending teams that are going to end up getting themselves paid, and he very well could be the next guy to be in that category. We've seen other players like your Blake Colemans and your Barclay Goodrows, etc., kind of set the field here for that in the last couple of years. And Connor Brown is very much that type of player. He's got tons of speed. He is offensively gifted, and he can kill penalties, and he's a threat shorthanded, block shots, like all those things that you look for in that kind of player, that intangible guy that can be your, a third line, real good depth piece on a cup championship team. He's got all those traits and very well could be that guy. And in Ottawa, he's had an opportunity to play more of a top six role, but not always. I guess it depends on injuries and whatnot. And some of the younger guys coming up there are certainly going to be more skilled and a little bit more offensively gifted, and might push him down the lineup. And maybe he's not thrilled about playing third line on a team that's not a cup contender as of yet. So I don't know where things stand officially with Brown. It doesn't sound like he necessarily wants out or anything of that nature. Nowhere near that. It's just a case of wanting to see what else is out there. And if he's reluctant to sign an extension, then they very well might look to trade him while he still has a full year left on his deal to get a better value, bigger return. So we'll see. No guarantee that happens, but it certainly kind of gives the Ottawa management an idea of what his future holds, so that they can make a decision, and it might come to finding a move if there is one indeed out there. Now, of course, there was also some interesting conversations about Marc-Andre Fleury going to the Montreal Canadiens. I've seen that floating around the rumor mill over the past 24 to 48 hours. Essentially, that stemmed from an article and as well as an interview he did with La Presse in Montreal. It was all stemmed from a golfing event that he was at along with some other NHL talent, and ended up granting an interview, which I've seen parts of. And essentially, he says when he was asked about the possibility of signing as a free agent with the Montreal Canadiens, and he didn't come out and deny anything. He kind of played along. He was, his usual happy-go-lucky self. And Fleury just kind of said, yeah, it was a possibility. He is technically a free agent. He said it could be an option, I believe was his exact wording. But then he quickly changed it to say, but it's not as of right now, because Carey Price did finish the season. And, I certainly want to wish him the best in, recovering and being able to play next year. So essentially saying, unless Carey Price can't play for sure, there's really no opportunity there, because they already have Jake Allen. They technically do have Samuel Montembeault, who's a restricted free agent as well. And they very well might opt to go with Allen and Montembeault if Price can't go. No guarantee they'd want to spend the money to bring in a guy like Fleury. It sounds like what the information coming out of Montreal and the moves that Kent Hughes is looking to make, and what he's made already, that they very well are going to be turning over this roster pretty well. But I'm not sure how deep of a rebuild we're going to go in. Like, for example, we did see the Shea Weber contract be moved, and instead of getting thankfully, I guess for them, they did not have to attach an asset, which a lot of people thought they were going to have to do. But instead, they get back Evgeny Dodonov, who's got 1 year left on his contract. He can play a top six role. So it kind of makes you wonder what exactly they're going to do here. They certainly want to make change, and based on Kent Hughes' comments after that trade, it made it sound like he expects to be extremely busy, and there will be lots of activity. But, and there's also a lot of uncertainty around the health of Carey Price. Hughes even said that they may not even know the health of Price until we get to training camp, because they were originally hoping that he could give them more clarity on his situation by the time free agency kicks in, so that if they needed to go another route and maybe consider another goaltender, that they'd have that option. So I guess, but the latest comments made it sound like, they probably won't really know. So he made it sound like he was going to bank on him being there. So I'm like, okay, well, if you can't really say for sure, that's tough to say. Now, do they bring in Marc-Andre Fleury and go with a tandem of Fleury and Price for a year, or Fleury and Jake Allen? Because, you have to wonder, there's some different options that could be there. Fleury also did mention in the interview that he's at a point in his career where he doesn't feel like he needs to play 60-65 games, and he's certainly open to sharing the workload and playing more in a tandem situation like he did with Robin Lehner in Vegas. So that certainly would bode well, because clearly if he did end up in Montreal, it would certainly be a scenario like that. So I think Fleury to Montreal is probably a little bit of a stretch. I don't really see the real fit. Obviously, I'm sure to some degree for him, being from the province of Quebec, that might be meaningful for him. But at the same time, I don't know what's more important to him, you could say. A lot of people think he's going to end up back in Pittsburgh, because they do have an opening there with their backup goalie, Casey DeSmith, being an unrestricted free agent as well. And there's been a lot of talk that he'd love to finish up going back to where he started and playing with guys like Crosby, Letang, if he's still there, etc., for another year or two. We'll see. But he did say he wants to play at least one more year. I'm not sure that he's going to want to sign too long of a term of contract. It might just be a 1 year deal. So you never know, I guess, depending on who's, willing to offer what. Could Montreal be an option as a Carey Price fallback if he's not able to play? It's possible, but Fleury did say as well that as much as he's not in a big rush, he didn't want to take too much time as well, because he needs to be able to, find place to live and get his kids enrolled in school and get all those things settled for family purposes, which ultimately do take some time and have an impact. So we'll see where things go. I'm not so sure that it's really a big likelihood that we see this happening, but obviously with Montreal media covering this and talking to him, they certainly wanted to put a spin on it like it was a possibility, and he certainly didn't deny anything or spin it in a different way so that it made it sound like there was no chance either. So we'll see where it goes, but it's not something I expect to take place. When it comes to the Blackhawks, there's more articles between The Athletic and Pierre LeBrun, as well as NBC Sports Chicago, talking a little bit additional about the future of Alex Debrincat and the fact that it appears as though he's definitely on the market. It doesn't sound like Chicago is out there actively shopping him per se, but now that teams know that he's available, lots of teams are inquiring. Not much we know for sure, but the big part of this is what's this going to do for the impact of Patrick Kane. Now, Kane made it known before when he was asked about this team going into a deep rebuild that what his thoughts were, and he said he seemed to be okay sticking around to help the young guys out, and as long as he even mentioned that he enjoyed playing with Alex Debrincat because he probably never figured Debrincat would be any chance of being traded. And that, he enjoys playing with him, and that as long as he was around, he wouldn't see himself wanting to go. But if Debrincat is moved, is that going to change Kane's mind? And it could be a way for GM Kyle Davidson to not only continue the rebuild and get a good haul in return, but to maybe convince Kane that it is time to go as well. I mean, if you imagine Kane's making $10 million along with Captain Jonathan Toews, but if you can retain 50% next year, which Chicago would be more than capable of doing, teams would line up for a chance at Patrick Kane for $5 million. If you look at the teams that might want to add a top 6 winger to make a run for the Stanley Cup, who wouldn't want Patrick Kane on your team? I mean, he's incredibly talented, playing at a high level at his age, and he's got Stanley Cups to his name. He knows what it takes to win in the playoffs. So, to me, there would be a lot of interest, and you can get yourself a great return. Problem is with Kane and Toews, it doesn't matter what the GM or any of us fans think about if they should trade him or not. They have a full no-move clause, and they fully carry that judgment and that decision on their own. So certainly the team can approach them, but if they don't want to play ball, they don't want to play ball. But by trading his buddy Debrincat and line mate, you have to think that would increase the odds of Kane going as well. So you have to think that one could definitely impact the other. And when the guys like Frank Saravalli out there saying it's not a matter of if he gets traded, it's a matter of when, it could be also a case if we don't see a big blockbuster deal out of Chicago this offseason, that maybe next year at the deadline, before the end of next season, that we could see guys like Debrincat and Kane both be dealt, and that would be one heck of a busy deadline, that's for sure. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.